Alrighty. Hello and welcome to today's session. My name is Madison and I am a marketing coordinator for our Master of Science in Learning Design and Technology online degree program. Thank you so much for joining us for today's Expert Series webinar, What I Wish I Knew Before Becoming an Instructional Designer with Dr. Luke Hobson. A couple of housekeeping notes before we get started. Our program academic director, Dr. Evans, has joined us for this session and she will be monitoring the chat to help answer any program-specific questions that you may have. This session will be recorded and you can expect an email to be sent your way with that recording by the end of the day today. And we will have time at the end for questions, but we will also be monitoring the chat throughout the presentation. At the end of this webinar, we will also share important program information such as program details and application and admissions information for those of you who might be interested in starting the MS LDT program. As a final note, this platform has a chat feature that you will see on the right-hand side of your screen. Please jump in and say hello, let us know where you are tuning in from, and we'd love to know where you're at in your career journey too. Are you already working in instructional design? Are you moving into the industry? Or please let us know, we'd love to hear. We also have a variety of attendees today, and we know some of you are brand new to joining a session from our program. Some of you might be working through your applications, and some of you might be currently enrolled students. Wherever you are from, we thank you all so much for joining us here today. So let's get started. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing you to our featured speaker, Dr. Luke Hobson. Dr. Luke Hobson is a senior instructional designer and program manager at MIT. He's an online instructor for Southern New Hampshire University. He's the founder of the Instructional Design Institute and author of the book, What I Wish I Knew Before Becoming an Instructional Designer. Dr. Hobson has a passion for online learning and sharing his experience with others to help them learn more and transition into this exciting field. With that, I will be passing the presentation controls over to Dr. Hobson until the end of the presentation. So please feel free to take it away.
Okay, can you hear me now?
There you are. Fantastic.
Someone in the chat was this like instructional design, technical difficulties goes hand in hand. Like, yeah, this would happen as I use a new platform. So everyone in the chat, can you hear me now? Just give me a yes if you can. Well, Maddie, at least you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you.
There we go. There we go. Now some answers coming in. Yes. Well, wonderful. Thank you, Maddie. And also thank you, Dr. Evans. Awesome. And everyone over from University of San Diego, thank you for allowing me to be able to go and do this from the Masters in the LDT program. And folks, welcome on in to the nerdiest presentation you are going to be a part of today. I cannot wait to dive on in with you just to share more about a topic that is obviously near and dear to my heart, which is instructional design. This entire presentation we are going to be going through, I really just want to do a brain dump with you of all the things that I wish that someone had told me about before becoming an instructional designer. We're going to go through the goods and the bads, the in-betweens, and all the other fun stuff as well, just to be able to really make sure that you have a clear, concise overview about everything of what this field has to offer, and of course, helping you along your own instructional design journeys. So I have a question for you folks to actually start with everything. How many of you knew about instructional design before 2020? Go into the chat, give me a yes or give me a no. I'm really curious about this one. And also, if you're wondering, I do ask a lot of questions as I am presenting. Seeing some yeses trickle in, seeing some no's, seeing start in 2009. Fantastic. Some no's, some yeses. So this is what I find to be so fascinating, folks, that as I am talking to new instructional designers, one of the things that I always hear about is that like, wow, Luke, this is so exciting. I can't wait. This is so brand new. And it's just like, well, actually, it's exciting. Don't get me wrong. You're 100% right. But really, it's not new. And as a matter of fact, we can actually go back and trace our origins of training, learning and development, and instructional design really back in World War II, which is absolutely crazy to be able to think about. Then from there, we started to get more along the lines of Benjamin Bloom and talking about Bloom's taxonomy back in 1956. And then all of a sudden, all these different types of learning theorists really began to emerge, obviously from Bloom to Gagne to Maryland to many, many more. Then in 1980, we actually had Plato, the first ever type of computer-based training simulation that really did come about, and it was a sign of things to come. And then we jump into 2000, and then that's when online learning really began. Boom. And of course, instructional design was absolutely a part of this. And it became very common to hear people saying that they're going back to school. And you started seeing more and more commercials with the University of Phoenix, ITT Tech, and many more. And then now, of course, nowadays in 2022, soon to be 2023, many different universities are offering these same different types of programs and scaling for all of the different types of masses. And then 2020 finally did come about. And then this is when the entire world learned about instructional design. And of course, not in a great way, obviously, with the pandemic, but we did have remote learning and high flex learning. And all these different types of terms began to emerge that was different compared to online learning, was very much emergency learning. But many people started to think more about instructional design. And then that's where things leave us into today, which I am just dubbing as the instructional design boom. Because now, more than ever, people are hiring for instructional designers. And when I first started, it was just a few places here and there. Now it's crazy to me, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around this, that we as instructional designers, we have infiltrated the Denver Broncos. There is an instructional designer on an NFL team, and it's not just the NFL. As you were going and searching on LinkedIn jobs, you can find job postings from pretty much anywhere, from Apple to Google to Twitter to Spotify to YouTube to every different form of university, institution, organization. Pretty much everyone is hiring for instructional designers, which this is mind-boggling to me, folks, because for years when I said that I was an instructional designer, I was just met with blank stares of like, what's instructional design? Like, what do you actually do? So this is incredible, a sign of things to come, and why I'm so glad that you are here today for this presentation, because I really hope to be able to guide you down this path, and maybe one of you can become the instructional designer for my New England Patriots and actually help us to save our season, because it doesn't look so great. But now let's dive on in to the pros and the cons of instructional design. Now, this is important because of the fact that I love what it is that I do. Don't get me wrong. That's why I'm currently here presenting to you on this screen. But also, it's a job. At the end of the day, there's going to be some goods and some bads. And I want you to make sure that you do have a realistic perspective about everything that you are going to be going through so far. So first, let's talk about the pros. Pro number one is definitely creativity. Your creative opportunities are endless as an instructional designer. I relate this to basically being an artist who's using learning sciences, where you're having a blank canvas and you, partnering with a subject matter expert, get to be able to figure out what is the learning experience really going to be looking like. And there's not that many jobs out there that really give you this type of this artistic freedom to be able to come up with exactly what will the learning experience entail. Now, thinking about it as far as for like with a sequence about what a person will be going through within a type of a module, maybe it'll be something like this sequence of a reading to a video, to a practice question, to a discussion, to a reflection, and then of course, blowing that out to as many weeks as humanly as possible that you actually need in order to get the job done. There are so many different ways for us to be able to create a meaningful, engaging, and relevant type of learning experience, and being able to do this is a huge part of your job, and figuring out what's going to be the best in the different types of circumstances and of course the situation. Now, there are so many different ways, and I'm not going to read all of these for you inside of this screen about different forms of learning assessments and activities, but I know for a lot of people, as soon as they hear about with online learning or with anything really in general pertaining to education or training, they're probably thinking about multiple choice questions and quizzes. Doesn't matter about online, in-person, hybrid, or what. It's typically what they think about. Now, obviously, there is so much more. From team-based learning to capstones to peer review-based assignments to simulations to projects to practices to reflections to you name it. We can do so many different types of things within this entire different type of learning experience. And you, as a designer, get to be able to think about what's going to work best for all of these different types of circumstances. The next pro, to me, is actually subject matter experts, and they are incredibly powerful allies. Now, why? Why is this actually on here for pros? Because you're probably saying to me, Luke, so if I Google SMEs, I hear a lot about horror stories and some not so great stuff. So why are SMEs actually a pro? Well, it's because of the fact that you get to work and partner with somebody who really is an expert in their field, and you get to learn from this person. Not only that, you as the individual at your organization is going to be building out a network. And from this network, when you get to go and work with these other different types of people, they become your champions, because they're going to say, oh, I absolutely loved working with this person, the design, what it actually looked like at the end of the day. And they're going to talk to other people. This is going to give you a better position of power within the organization too, in order for you to influence, to help with decisions, and really trying to be able to get things done. And last but not least is that absolutely this creates a world of new different types of opportunities. I have chatted with many SMEs offline who basically talk about, oh, hey, have you ever considered this? Can you help me with this? Can we talk about blah? And you're like, wow, this is kind of crazy. I never thought that just being able to chat and work with a person, it would lead to so many more opportunities, but it absolutely can in the right circumstance. And then finally, my third pro is that you are always learning. Instructional designers wear so many hats that it's not just about learning science and theory and trying to put that all together, but I would absolutely say that we are also project managers and networkers. You're going to be managing a budget. You're going to be a multimedia person. You're going to come into play with leadership and training and onboarding and so much more. You are going to be able to think and have all of these different types of skills that are going to be able to help you with transitioning from one job to another, or just being able to use this perhaps from one field into another as well. And Melissa, to answer your question, yes, this is being recorded. I also know that I talk a lot. So of course, you will be able to have this and it will be sent to you later on. So no worries there about the recording. So now, folks, let's talk about the cons to be able, once again, a realistic perspective about the field. I don't want to scare any of you. Once again, I love what it is that I do. That's why I'm currently talking to you. But also, I want you to know about just what potentially you might be coming across. Now, these are also my opinions, my own thoughts. You might talk to another instructional designer, and perhaps one of my cons is actually one of their pros, which I have actually heard about before. So let's talk about the first con. The first con to me is actually with scheduling. Whenever somebody asks me about, Luke, what does a typical day of an instructional designer look like for you? And I'm like, well, it's kind of hard to answer that question, because depending upon the day, I could be doing a billion different things. We just talked about how instructional designers wear so many hats, and obviously that's going to come into play, where some days I am focusing on one project, doing one certain set of tasks, and other days I'm off doing something completely different. So it very much does change depending upon the day, the project, even the hour. It always can certainly change. And then for all of you teachers out there too, I know that you have heard of this myth where summer is actually your downtime and you don't do anything. Now, I know many teachers and I'm like, no, they're absolutely super busy during the summer. Instructional design is the same way, especially for those of us who are instructional designers in higher education. Whenever someone says like, oh, what are you doing during the summer for vacation? I'm like, what vacation? Like, I am busier than ever because the fall semester is approaching and I need to do as much as I possibly can to make sure that those courses and programs are going to be up and running. And then, of course, trying to be able to work around other people's schedules. For some, they like to work early in the mornings. For others, perhaps this afternoon. And for others, it's going to be evenings. Depending upon the SME, you're trying to be able to match up with their schedule, work what's best for them to try to reduce any barriers if at all possible. Now, I already talked about this con a little bit, but this is definitely one for me that, depending upon the day, could be a pro or a con, but it's constantly adapting to change. This is something that is wild because you are going to be communicating with so many different stakeholders. Think about it, from SMEs to faculty to marketing to customer support to engineering to potentially grad students and TAs and the finance team and even more. You need to be able to change and adapt your communication style to the right stakeholders, and certainly that is mentally taxing trying to be able to do that day in and day out. And you need to be able to have those different types of mindsets. So going back to those many different hats that we actually wear, for some days, I feel like a researcher. Other days, I am a QA tester, making sure that the courses and programs I am building, they are working and not broken or anything like that. Other days, I'm an interviewer. I'm talking to all my students and learners going through my pilot programs and learning more about that. And other days, I actually feel like a learning designer. all really does depend upon the day and what it is that you are actually working on. And then finally is going to be being the middle person. This is really interesting. It's only happened to me a handful of times, but the times that it has happened to me really hasn't been so great. Instructional designers by nature, we're problem solvers. We are peacekeepers. We like to be able to keep the peace. And sometimes you might find yourself essentially being the middle person trying to negotiate between two parties who are actually feuding. They perhaps both might want what is best for the organization, the learning experience, the learners, or the students, but something has got to give. And usually there is a person who is helping to orchestrate and facilitate this to make sure that this is really all going to be available and ready to make sure that this is all going to be going according to plan. Now, I would also have a category in there. It's not a pro, it's not a con. I'm going to call this like the in-betweens, where really I would classify this as that's not in my job description, but hey, this is what I'm going to be doing anyway. Now, for me, this was certainly webinars and podcasts. I've often find myself, and you are going to be finding yourself as well too, that because you are a creative person, you are going to be trying to figure out better ways of solving problems, making them more efficient, and perhaps you're going to be inside of a room talking with your team members, and then you're going to be pitching ideas and looking around, seeing who is actually going to be the best person to then go and act on this idea. And after you look around and you're like, oh, it's me. Okay, here we go. And now nothing is going to come off your plate, which isn't super fun, but you get to go and act on an idea and see it all the way until the end. For me, this was really with podcasting. Luckily for me, I have A, this voice, and B, this microphone, which both comes in very handy. So thank you to my parents and my DNA for having this type of podcasting voice style. But this is what I had to be able to actually do with helping my learners going through one of our leadership programs at MIT. I have found that many of them still want to be actively involved and engaged in the program itself, but they didn't have time. Now, I did find out, though, that they did have time during their commute to work. So hence had this idea about what if I put a podcast where I was the narrator, weaving in through different types of stories and piecing together other different forms of interviews of industry experts. Would people actually listen? And to my surprise, they said yes. And they started to download it and ask for regular podcasting, which to me is still so surprising and shocking, but this really did work. But this is a thing, and you can actually go and right now Google and Apple Podcasts, look for this name, and it will actually pop up. Now, of course, once again, did anything come off my plate? No, I spent a whole bunch of time actually doing this. But did I learn a valuable new skill? Was I able to go and take this and transform this into my own podcast? Yeah, that actually did work. So it can be a type of a pro or potentially a con. Now, the next thing I really want to be able to tell you about what I wish I knew before becoming an instructional designer is how much you are going to be working with people. This is a people-focused job. So, of course, one of the questions that if I can go back in time and actually tell myself would be, how do you work with other people, specifically with subject matter experts? This, to me, absolutely is a number one skill you can focus on right now. It's going to be coming up in every single instructional job interview about how do you manage conflict? How do you manage to work with difficult people? What was your solution and how did you get around that? Because instructional designers, we are influencers, we are persuaders, we are negotiators. You don't report to a subject matter expert. They don't report to you, but you need to be able to get this decision maker on your side and to get things done. So how do you actually do this? So this is really a focus about working with subject matter experts. Now, one of the ways to be able to answer my own question about how I do this, this is one of my strategies that I use involving with researching subject matter experts. Now, why is this actually important? It's because of the fact that if you are working with any other person on any other kind of project, Wouldn't you want to research this person beforehand to learn more about who you're going to be working with? It's almost like if you were going to have your kitchen remodeled, you wouldn't actually go and look up a type of the website where you're going to be hiring the contractors to do the work. And you're just like, oh, that person's fine. You just hire them. Like, no, there's going to be some research involved to make sure that you really know about everything that's going to be going on. So I want to be able to know about my SME's background, their education. Have they written anything as far as for articles or blogs or papers? Do they have a LinkedIn account? Are there any courses or YouTube videos that I can actually watch? Are there interviews or PRs or accomplishments? What is it about this subject matter expert for why they are assigned to work with you on this project? Now, learning more about this person is going to reduce barriers. It's really going to allow you to be able to skip several steps ahead when it comes to forming incredible relationships with subject matter experts. So let me give you an example about how I actually have done this before in the past. For one course, I was assigned to work with a SME, and it was a SME on business strategies. I have no idea where business strategies is going. It could be in several different types of directions. So what am I really going to be able to do with this? I Googled the SME. From there, I found his LinkedIn profile. From his LinkedIn profile, I then saw that he had his own website that then linked to his own side business. Inside of there was a whole bunch of different types of articles that he just wrote about talking about strategy. And you can bet that I learned more about the terminology, the perspectives, and his mindset. So then when I actually went to go and meet him and we did our type of initial real face-to-face type of meeting as far as meeting him in person, as soon as we started to talk more about business and some of his ideas with everything, you can bet that the second he said some of those keywords that I recognized, I immediately jumped and was able to actually contribute to the conversation at a much faster pace compared to him trying to be able to go and explain it to me piece by piece and trying to be able to explain it to me like I'm 5. Which is a very common phrase that we use in instructional design to help to learn about something brand new. But this absolutely changed things because it built trust. We had this rapport and we were able to skip many steps and to really jump on into the actual design. Now, when working with SMEs, talking about wearing many different types of hats as instructional designers, one of the things that I want you to be able to think about is more about being an interviewer. Now, why does this matter to be able to interview your subject matter experts? Before you dive on into the actual design and the plan and all of that other good stuff, first things first, you should learn more about the SME, not just their background and everything else. But one of the things I love to be able to learn more about is, have you worked with an instructional designer before? And then my 3 words are tell me more, because it is so fascinating what answers you might get. Because if they said, yes, I've worked with an instructional designer before, it's like, great, tell me more. Oh, I worked with Alex before, and it was really simple. We just actually used Google Docs. We put in the backward design template right inside of there, and it was pretty easy. Oh, cool. You've actually worked at backward design before. Excellent. Well, what did you actually find out about with this process? Who made it so easy for you? Oh, we had check-in calls every Tuesday. Is at 3? That's actually the best time for me. So it was so simple. And really, they just made everything work for me. Okay, Tuesdays at 3. You use backward design. All right, I can actually work with this. We have a starting point. So those are some of the positives. On the flip side, if they worked with an instructional designer before, and let's say that they had a completely different style compared to how you work, that's also really important. I've been on a bunch of different types of instructional design calls where there's multiple instructional designers tag teaming a project, and I was able to just observe other instructional designers, and some people are really aggressive when it comes to trying to be able to design. And over times, some people take a more laid back approach. So it's not a one size fits all type of thing when it comes to working with other people. So it's really good to know about their past experiences when working with other instructional designers. Now, also for the SME, you want to know more about why they are actually on the project itself. What are their wants and their needs? What are their ideas about the training, the course, the program, the workshop, the webinar, whatever it actually is for the product that you're going to be building? What are their pain points? Do they have any misconceptions about instructional design or learning or online learning? And of course, how do they prefer to work on projects as well too? Because you'll find that for some people, their creativity perhaps is actually best when they're working solo by themselves. And then together, when you have your check-in call, you can then brainstorm and put all the things together. Other people, they absolutely cannot work alone. They have to work with you to bounce ideas off you all together. I've had some SMEs actually tell me before that they just wanted me on the call and they're going to do everything as far as they're filling out the templates and going through things, but they just want me there in case if they had questions. So you never know when it comes to being able to do this. And of course, it is so important to know more about the subject matter experts as you were trying to be able to build this partnership with them to make sure that everything is all going to come together. Now, folks, let's talk more about branding, about networking, and of course, about LinkedIn. Go into the chat for me real quick. How many of you are actively using LinkedIn? And bonus question for you, if you want to be able to copy and paste your LinkedIn profile into the chat to be able to connect with these other lovely instructional designers and aspiring instructional designers, absolutely feel free to do so. But really curious, to go in the chat, tell me how many of you have actually are using LinkedIn? Seeing one no, one yes. And I know there's a slight delay when I ask questions, so I'm trying to be mindful of that as well. Seeing a lot of yeses now. Actively on the site, but you don't post much. I'm on LinkedIn, but I'm not there in there daily. So that is fantastic. Jesse's already sharing their information as well too. So the thing is, folks, is that when it comes for branding, networking, and LinkedIn, what I want you to be able to think about is really trying to figure out how are you going to be able to stand out from the crowd. Now, why is this important? It is important for you to be able to figure out your identity as an instructional designer, because there are so many people out there who don't identify with their skill sets. They identify with an organization and then they leave in the organization and they're like, what do I do? Like, I don't know anymore. And no, you want to be able to identify with your skill sets because, of course, you are a talented educator, trainer, instructional designer. You need to really be able to focus on those things. Now, being able to establish this type of an online presence is going to help not only with your self-confidence, but with finding other people and, of course, with finding really your niche, which is also the biggest thing. Because I know that for a lot of people, when they think about LinkedIn, they're like, oh, I need to be able to become the superstar guru instructional designer if I post on LinkedIn. No, not at all. You don't need to become this incredible wizard of instructional design. You can just focus on you and even talking about your own learning journey and what it is that you're actually going through. One person who is an incredible example, who some of you might actually follow currently on LinkedIn because she has been posting so much and doing an incredible job, is Melanie Knight. Now, Melanie just started to be able to create an online presence by documenting her instructional design journey and actually just sharing notes from every workshop and webinar that she attended. And this became, for her, this humongous blog. And now she has thousands of followers right now who are following along and learning about instructional design in real time alongside of her. And that's crazy because that became her brand. All the people who followed her were other aspiring instructional designers, teachers trying to transition over into the instructional design space, and they wanted to learn more. And see, some of you even in the chat even know who Melanie is. So that's already the proof right inside of there. Now, maybe blogging is not your thing. Maybe you want to be able to actually host a virtual book club and go through and host those on a weekly type of basis. Some of you might be able to create study groups or masterminds or whatever it is you want to be able to do. But having this type of an online presence is so important for building your own personal brand, for networking. And of course, LinkedIn is the best platform that I've been able to actually use to be able to do this. Now, who should you connect with? A lot of you are already connecting with one another inside of a chat, which is absolutely wonderful and fantastic. And this is actually one of the best pieces of advice that I can use within LinkedIn as far as for trying to figure out how do you actually create a news feed that is relevant for you and for your instructional design journey. And one of the things that I always tell people is to be able just to connect with other instructional designers. Now, why? Well, it's because they post information that is going to be relevant. They talk about current resources and research and trends. Whenever somebody says, like, they ask me about how do you actually know about what is currently going on within the instructional design world, I just have to go on LinkedIn and I just go on my news feed real quick, and it's very clear to me about what is trending. When microlearning bursted onto the scene not too long ago, everyone was talking about microlearning, and it was like, okay, I really should pay more attention to this and see what's currently happening. That is the best way to stay on top, in my opinion, about trying to be able to do this. Now, the other biggest tip about with LinkedIn is that I have found that instructional designers post instructional design jobs before their organizations do. Why? Well, this actually does make sense because this person is on a team. They already know ahead of time about how this new type of job is going to be coming about. Now, just to actually go and illustrate my point, and please excuse the horrific type of graphic that I have created from just screenshotting a bunch of things. But before I made this slide deck, I went on LinkedIn real quick. I just searched up and down in my feed for probably 2 minutes. These were all the jobs that I found just from connecting with other instructional designers. No other magic, no other secret. But now all of a sudden, I have someone who is going to be inside, giving you the inside type of scoop and perspective about the organization, what they're looking for. And of course, if you want to be able to chat with this person, to have a virtual coffee chat to learn more about the role, the position, the organization, the culture, whatever it is, you now have access to this person. And it's simply just from following them on LinkedIn and then going and following up with a message and learning more and connecting with them. Now, once again, this isn't just a specific area. My niche is definitely higher education, but I have seen job postings for instructional designers for everything. If the NFL was hiring for an instructional designer, anyone's hiring for an instructional designer. And just once again, to actually provide some proof of this, I have found that from Zoom, Discord, Amazon, Apple, Zillow. Meta was hiring for a ton of instructional designers and learning experience designers a couple of months ago. And of course, every type of higher education institution, from Harvard to MIT to Cornell to all the ones in probably your local area, are also hiring as well too for instructional designers. And once again, seeing those connections about who works at what destination, you can connect with them, especially too as you are applying for instructional design jobs. Now, go into the chat for me real quick. Once again, I am curious if you know about this tip. Did you know that you can search instructional design and then people to find people where they work at specific organizations? So if you want to go and search instructional designers, MIT, and people, that would pop up all the instructional designers at MIT. Did you know about this trick? And I'm calling it a trick because I did not know this until someone told me, and that this is how they actually found me, seeing a lot of yeses, seeing some nos. So this really did blow my mind because one person mentioned about how they wanted to be able to go and find instructional designers at Northeastern University. That's where she wanted to work. I worked at Northeastern University at the time. So she typed in instructional design, Northeastern, and then people. And then all of a sudden, everyone on my team actually popped up. And then that was the type of trick that she used to be able to go and to speak with other people, message them, ask about, can we actually go and have a chat? Can you tell me more about the job? Do you like working there? And all those other different types of things too, to be able to get that type of an insider perspective that's really useful. And this doesn't need to be just for only being able to go and get a job, folks. This can be just for trying to be able to go and build your network, for chatting, or for anyone who is like me with having a blog or a podcast or whatever you want to be able to do. It's a very easy way to find people and actually make this more of a type of a normal, approachable way of being able to essentially talk to strangers on the internet, but doing it in a way that actually feels a little bit normal. So now you might be saying, so Luke, how do I actually go and reach out to these people and really make this happen? This was one message that I received from someone now years ago, which I still can't believe that 2020 feels like it was 10 years ago, and it's really only 2-ish years ago. This is one message that I received over from somebody who basically just says, hey, Luke, I know that you have probably heard this 10 times this week, but I hope that you are well. I appreciate reading your articles and your content. If you ever have time, I would love to be able to connect with you, just a small 10 to 15 minute window. Would you be able to do that? Would you be open to this? And I saw that and I was like, sure, I'd love to be able to talk with you and tell you more about instructional design. And if I can give you some tips about your journey, then hey, why not? I'm all for it. This was the type of a message, though, that I received that I knew it was a real person, which you're going to be seeing some messages come through sometimes. And it's just like, there's no personality, there's no feeling. It's very cold. And you're like, oh, like, I mean, maybe, I guess. So if it's something a little bit more personal, a little bit more human, definitely the other person on the other side is far more receptive and going to be able to respond. Now, once again, of course, not every single person is going to be reaching back out to you, responding. And then I know that for some people, their inboxes are just straight up chaos and madness. And I know that mine is also kind of guilty of that. Try to respond back when I can, but sometimes that does happen. Or maybe they simply don't even use their LinkedIn and it just exists to be able to actually be there. But folks, this is a way to be able to reach out with others and to help to be able to build out your network. Now, the next thing I want to be able to share with you is actually the future of instructional design, in my opinion. And of course, the trick is that it's actually already here. Because for so many people, when they think about instructional design, it's actually a rather limited window, when really we can do so much more. And there's so many things that I've been able to see right in front of me that I'm like, wow, I want to keep on sharing this and hope that it's going to be able to reach a larger audience. So let's dive on into this. The first is that when you think about having a discussion in an online world, so many of us know about Zoom. But my question for all of you is, have you used a different platform before instead of Zoom, like GatherTown? Go into the chat for me real quick. Have you used GatherTown before? Give me a yes or give me a no. Now, I'm curious about this one because GatherTown has been a platform that I have been using now for, it's actually kind of surprising. I'm seeing a lot of no's. I'm seeing some yeses as well, too. So GatherTown, interesting. It basically looks like if you had a cross between an old school Zelda game and Zoom, and they mashed together to make something. That's essentially what GatherTown looks like. It's a free platform for up to 20 people as of this moment on November 7th, before I get timestamp myself, that it is currently free. This is something that is so interesting to me because of the fact it is a fully customizable virtual world that is different. And I was trying to think about how, for my own online courses, could I make our types of weekly meetings different? And I like to be able to have fireside chats when I conclude the entire course. And this is one of the platforms that we use, was GatherTown. You log in, you have your own little type of avatar, as you can see down below. And then our little avatars were circling around a fire that actually did sound like a fireplace. This all was fully customizable just by using a template that was able to then go and actually put this into practice, where this is all based around proximity. Now, for proximity, this simply meant that if my little avatar went over to another person, I was able to actually start to hear them a little bit more, until all the way I can hear things from full audio perspective, and their little window became all the way bright and full. And then when I was done having the conversation, then I would actually walk away, and then the window would fade out, and the audio would fade out as well. It's essentially a way for you to have flexibility and autonomy inside of a Zoom-esque kind of world. And of course, what made this thing so interesting for people is that for some, trying to be able to think about an icebreaker when starting a course is a little bit difficult. I didn't need to do that at all. The icebreaker was the platform, because all of a sudden people are like, what is this? Like, why am I a snowman? Like, what is actually going on? And it was so funny to be able to do this. And the more and more that I've used GatherTown, the more that I have seen my students really just be excited about the course and being able to go through things. The other thing that I'll go and ask you about inside of a chat once again is, have you ever used Spot? Once again, go into the chat. Give me a yes. Give me a no. And while we're waiting for those responses, Spot, and what you're currently seeing on the screen, was how I used to actually host office hours for another university that I taught at. And what essentially it looked like was that now we went from the Super Nintendo version, where now we've kind of upgraded. It's like a GameCube. Now it's a first-person view. Of course, I can toggle to be a third-person view if I wanted it to be able to do this. But this, I was just simply sitting in my office, as you were currently seeing, with a little tiny white table. I was listening to music in the background, and students with their little avatars would come in through that glass door, and that's how I hosted my office hours. Once again, it was different. It was exciting. It was a way for me to be able to actually connect with students on a different type of level. And it was really interesting to be able to use this. Same thing with Spot. It's free for up to X amount of people. Don't quote me on a number. I can't recall, but that is another one. And Spot is spelled like that, SPOT. And the other one, GatherTown, is actually gather.town. I believe it has a dot inside of there. I'm fairly confident about that one. But very interesting, a different type of way to do discussions. And I started to use this because of a conference that I attended where they use this as well. So whether you want to be able to do student office hours, host team meetings, host conferences, whatever it is, you can absolutely use these different types of platforms. Now, the other thing that, especially living in our different types of times, is that for many of you as well, too, you're probably on Zoom. I mean, even right now, I'm currently on camera talking to you. I've been on camera pretty much all day, and that's kind of been my job. No, I don't mind this because it is what it is. You know, it is what it is for my actual job. But for some students, I know that Zoom fatigue is a real thing. And now I started to hear about this and was just like, I was like, all right, I understand. You don't need to be on camera. You've been on camera from 9 to 5, and then all of a sudden, in your hours in the evening, you're trying to be able and been asked to go on camera once again. What is the solution? What I found is that for students, they still wanted to be able to actually respond back to me, but they just didn't want to be on camera. So I took a lesson out of something that is called VTubers. Now, if you don't know what VTubers are, they are virtual YouTubers, incredibly popular YouTubers who never show their face once on camera. Instead, they use the software that you are currently seeing on the screen, like Ready Player Me, Face Rig, and Vroid Studio. This allows them to create a virtual representation of themselves and then to be able to go and follow along, smile, nod, talk, all those other different types of motions. And what I have found is that once again, it became a conversation starter. It became different. It became a way for people to actually want to interact more, especially in the evenings when they're tired and going through a bunch of things. And then for some people, they're just trying to be able to have their dinner while still taking classes in the evenings. And this became a way for them to be able to do this, to have the same different type of level of engagement. And of course, it didn't take away anything for me as the instructor. This was absolutely fine. And yes, Christopher, to your point, Zoom does have this built in now. I actually tested this out with hallway tile is what I used the other day to be able to get this, and I tied that into Zoom. Really interesting. Very easy to be able to use in the setup. For most of these things, by the way, too, they're either a very small fee or some of them are free. So once again, another option for our students to be able to do this. Then again, of course, especially with an instructional design land, which you are probably reading about, is much more about extended reality, XR, or as one of the very many popular topics inside of this XR umbrella is going to be the topic of the metaverse. Now, the metaverse is not only just Mark Zuckerberg's creation, his marketing level brain genius, being able to actually trademark Meta and the metaverse is its own thing. But there are other different forms of metaverses that do exist, where indeed people are thinking much more about training and education with virtual reality. And of course, when it comes to being able to work together as a team as well too. And this is what you're currently seeing with Facebook's Horizon. We're actually having people wear an Oculus and then be able to go up into the virtual blackboard and to actually write on the screen, to sit on a desk, and to do all these different types of things. Now, do I think that everyone is going to be doing this at any point in time? No, absolutely not. There is going to be several barriers pertaining to accessibility, pertaining to costs, pertaining to different forms of rural areas with Wi-Fi connection issues. And even for me, I'm not sure if any of you folks have worn an Oculus before, but I've used them. And then after like 10 to 20 minutes, I'm basically done. It doesn't feel great. It strains my eyes. And then for some of the different types of things that I've done with walking around different areas, I became super motion sickness. No time flat. It really wasn't that great of a time. So it's something to be conscious of and aware of, because virtual trainings that you are going to be creating in the future are going to happen. This is going to be a thing. The biggest example that I have seen that actually did completely wow me was that there was the Bernard Tyson J School of Medicine in California actually used this for being able to train future doctors by being able to scan in virtual cadavers with a QR code and to pop that up and allow the students to see a realistic overall glimpse of what the cadavers were if they would be actually using that within the classroom. And that was at the very, very height of the pandemic where everything was fully blown in lockdown. So there are many examples that you can go and find about this. Not once again, I don't think everything is going this way, but always good thing to be conscious of. And then the final thing, and I'll just finally stop talking because, of course, I talk way too much, is going to be talking about learning tracks. Now, from an instructional designer's perspective, this is something that I am absolutely I'm so enamored by this right now because of the fact that for any of you, especially for the teachers and educators out there, you know that when you were teaching a class and you get a whole different group of brand new students, everyone comes in with different levels of prior knowledge. It really is extremely difficult to be able to create one path that everyone is going to go down and to become successful at that. You will always have the majority who are going to be the middle of the road. Then you're going to have your outliers, though, those who just are able to do everything lightning fast, and then they're bored. And then you have the other people who need way more coaching and supports because they're struggling with the content. So doesn't it make sense to be able to create a customizable, flexible way for students and learners to be able to pick and choose how they want their training and their education? To me, this makes a lot of sense. And the thing is that we can do this right now. What you're seeing on the screen is with a platform called EduFlow. I know that at least one of you just mentioned in a chat that you were inside of a new instructional design principles for course creators that just launched recently, which is a free course at EduFlow Academy. But EduFlow as a learning platform blows my mind because I am able to go inside of here and then create different forms of learning tracks for students. So in theory, if I was teaching a graduate course on marketing, let's say from there, I was able to actually distinguish 3 different paths of difficulty of an easy track, a medium track, and a hard track. This would then adjust depending upon the hours of all the different assignments and assessments and activities and content that I created, and also changing about too the severity of how hard or how easy the different types of exercises are going to be. But also, not just that, if I was teaching this marketing course, and let's say that some students want to become entrepreneurs and they're learning about marketing for their own business, and other students wanted to become an actual marketer and they're going for their master's in marketing, what if I wanted to be able to split those paths into 2? Well, I can. This is all possible to literally do right now. And this absolutely blows the mind of many people thinking that this is so far in the future. And it's like, no. It can be done right now. Yes, it's a lot of time, a lot of work, and a lot of energy. But if you really want to be able to go and to do this and to put this into multiple different paths, you can. And one of those examples, it doesn't need to be just my craziness of trying to change the difficulty levels of things, but one of them is actually going to be, and it's from example from that EduFlow course, was we asked you to be able to pick and choose about what type of sector did you want to work in: corporate, government, higher ed, K through 12, or nonprofit. Depending upon the tag that you selected, this then unlocked content that was specific to your sector. That way, it was more relatable to you. It's going to speak more to you, because if you were trying to learn more about higher education, but you're on a corporate track and all you saw were corporate examples, maybe it doesn't speak to you. But of course, the other thing, which is incredible, is that you still have the freedom to be able to pick and choose if you want to stay on the track or if you want to leave that track and go into another one. So that way, you are creating a learning experience that's autonomous, it's flexible, and really does focus on the learners and the students and giving them the freedom to pick and choose how they want the overall learning experience design to actually look and to feel. Well, that, folks, I am now done talking because I talk way too much. If you liked all this nerdy rambling that I just talked about, I know one person mentioned it too inside of the chat. This really did come from my book that you can find on Amazon called What I Wish I Knew Before Becoming an Instructional Designer. Also, I am a talking head on the internet. You can find my podcast, YouTube channel, blog, courses, and all these other different things too. If you do just Google Dr. Luke Hobson, I'll pop right up. But that, folks, is what I have for you. I would love now to do a Q&A, by the way. Please feel free, leave your questions inside of a chat. I will do a rapid round of answering as many questions as I can over the next 10 minutes, and we can go from there. But overall, just want to say thank you for being with me right now and nerding out about the instructional design world.
I'm going to jump in and help look at some questions. I saw one on the Q&A side from Muti, who requested, do you have any online community in Discord or other platforms for instructional designers? Are there any that can be shared?
Yeah, there is a Slack community for instructional designers that we do have inside of EduFlow. That's probably the best one that we do have. There's also, I have my own, I have two different communities as well too. There's one for, now I'm going to go and open up different tabs. There's one for Instructional Design Institute community that I have that I will copy and paste in the chat. There's one. And then there's also Learning Nerd Nation on LinkedIn as well too, that we do have a bunch of fantastic folks who are over inside of there, and I'll copy and paste that as well.
Fantastic.
No problem. I'm trying to juggle between 7,000 different screens. Okay, fantastic. Cool. So the next question is from Alyssa. What's a hot tip for anyone interested in freelance instructional design work? Great question, Alyssa. So the thing with freelance is that it's not to me, before I did anything within freelance, it always to me was so intimidating because I was like, oh no, it's just me. Like, what happens if I have questions? I was like, how do I actually know about what do I really do if I have a problem? What am I going to face? And the thing that I found was this, like, you know what, just why don't you actually try it? Why don't you go and reach out and see if this is really for you? And one of the things that really did help me to test the waters about things was being able to just go and volunteer my time. That's kind of like my first step of freelance. I just wanted to see if I could actually do this and pull this off. And the best tip that I found to be able to do this, and this goes into the freelancing side of the house, is that I found that a lot of work was actually out there. Of course, on LinkedIn, it's going to be spreading from word of mouth. But one of the biggest groups that aren't tapped at all, but really, really, really should be, are entrepreneurs. There's many entrepreneurs out there right now who are trying to break into like the course scene. There's all these different, like YouTube is launching YouTube courses. There's a billion different platforms from Teachable and Kajabi and all these other different ways to make your own courses. And people think they are making a learning experience when it's just all videos. And you're like, well, I mean, it's a start, but we can do a lot more with that. So I found a lot of people, when I reached out to entrepreneurs, they were very, very willing to be able to be open-minded for that type of of help. So that is one thing that I really wish that I knew more about. Another question. How can I find more up-to-date presentation software? There's actually, there's been a whole bunch, and there's even more that's constantly coming about. Genially is one that I would recommend to dive on into with that one for presentations. But of course, there's also many standards too that might, even the slides I'm showing you right now is made with Google as well too. So it sometimes does not need to be so extravagant, but if you really want to go and dive on in, Genially is a really cool one. Next question comes from Kim. How do you maintain such awesome energy? I drink a lot of coffee. A lot of coffee. There is a Dunkin' Donuts within walking distance from my house, and thank God, because I need that. So lots of caffeine is in my system. When you're in a creative rut, when designing courses, what do you do to get out of it? Oh, Molly, that is a fantastic question. What I will typically do is that I will shut my laptop, I'll walk away, then I'll reach out to other instructional designers and other folks and just be able to pick their brains about what they're currently working on. So I'm not asking them to solve my problem, but I'm just kind of curious. So I was like, hey, tell me, like, what are you building with? What are you currently using? What are you currently doing within your world? And what I've often found is that just from talking out loud with other people and hearing some real world examples about their work, what they're working on, all of a sudden I'll go back to my desk 24 hours later and I'm feeling revitalized and energized. And I was like, okay, I got this. I can actually do this. The other thing, too, you can pay attention to is going to be, and it sounds really simple, I know, is that it's going to be just paying attention to the outside world and what people are currently doing and what organizations are currently doing as well. This really did blow my mind as soon as I was just like, what if I just start going and paying attention to what organizations are going through and seeing, is there something that I can take away from this? This especially helped me with scenario-based learning and trying to create better, more real-world hypothetical situations to put my learners through, because I was paying attention to the outside world. And for many of them, they were also following along with the news and seeing things happen in real time. And that actually made that type of like a clicking relatable moments. So that is the other one that I definitely use. Let's see. Moody, could you share the Slack community? Yes, I can. I can certainly share that as well. I actually wonder if I'm trying to think if I'm an admin in that Slack community. I don't know if I am. I might not be able to do it. I might have to get back to you to share you that link. It is inside of the EduFlow Academy, though. That's what I was trying to think about. Question from Lou. How is EduFlow different from an LMS where you can set up a learning pathway curriculum? Lou, the difference is that they can actually, as in the learners, can pick and choose to go to different learning paths. I found for a lot of other learning platforms out there, like with Canvas and a few other different ones too, you can set it manually on the back end as far as for with you, the instructor, the instructional designer, set up everything ahead of time, and then the learners go through the experience. But with EduFlow, it's more of the options there, and then the students pick and choose what it is that they actually go and do. And that has been the big difference that I've actually seen. Next question. I live in Africa. Many of the top-notch programs, master programs, my idea, are hugely inaccessible for me. Cost mainly. I'm trying to put together a free online program for myself to immerse myself into instructional design. Oh, how fascinating. Any recommendations? So one valuable resource that many institutions do have to offer, if you want to go and dive on into teaching and learning labs, and that's not one company or something. It's that many different types of institutions offer and have a teaching and learning lab website that then allows you to go and read things for free. And some of them are extremely expansive in nature, like with Harvard's teaching and learning lab. It's absolutely huge. You can find yourself down a rabbit hole. MIT's OpenCourseWare is also all free and accessible. And you can also dive into that one too. And that goes into quite a few things, not just with readings and videos, but also with some activities and downloads and templates and whatnot and so forth. So those are two different resources that you can go and use. So MIT OpenCourseWare and Teaching and Learning Labs, two really awesome things. Do you have a project management tool you like for course design? Corey, I'm a pretty simple person. Honestly, I really do just enjoy using like Google Sheets. I know that's super boring. However, I have used Trello boards. I have used Jira. I'm starting to use Rike, which is another one. So all of those you can definitely go and dabble with. But for the most part, I'm a very simple person and kind of stick with the basics. And then for Harness says, can you recommend on how to keep current tracks of trends? Like I said, LinkedIn, it's really following other instructional designers on LinkedIn and seeing the news feed and seeing what they are talking about. For some of the instructional designers out there who you want to be able to go and to follow to learn more about specifically with trends and with things that are coming about, there are a few instructional designers who very much do cover those things, such as with Dr. Carl Kopp, talks about a lot of things. Connie Malamed is another one. Chrissy Tucker is another incredible person who talks more about trends and talking more about research and summarizing some of those things. So certainly I would recommend to follow some of those folks. And of course, all the typical instructional designers who you probably have come to know and love through YouTube and podcasting. There's a lot of really good free information out there pertaining to those things. So those are some of the things that I would recommend. And I think I actually just got through all the questions and now it's already 4:00 and I am done talking.
Fantastic.
So, hey, there we go. Had some tech issues at the beginning, but we got there.
We definitely did. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Hobson, for answering all of those questions and for that presentation. I'm just going to go through a few program information about our LDT program here at USD. Please. So I'm going to take over the slides really quickly, but again, thank you so much. So first, we wanted to provide some additional information about the program, such as curriculum details, application due dates, and admission requirements. The MS in Learning Design and Technology program is made up of 10 3-unit courses for a total of 30 academic units to be completed. The program is designed to be completed in 5 consecutive semesters over 20 months, and each semester is 14 weeks long, where students will focus on one 7-week class at a time. On this next slide, you can view the admission requirements, and these are, of course, listed on the website if you'd like to review them further. During the application process, our advisors will help make sure you have all of your application materials, and they'll help personally review them for you. Once everything is good to go, they will formally submit the application to Dr. Evans, your academic director, and should you be accepted, you will then be enrolled in classes and you will start your orientation. We do want to call out that the spring 2023 semester is just around the corner and the application deadline is quickly approaching. So if you're interested in applying, please note that the final application deadline is December 2nd and the term will begin on January 10th. We are happy to provide you with an application waiver code as a thank you for joining us today. Or if you have any questions or if you'd like to receive an application waiver, please connect with an enrollment advisor and they'll be happy to help you. To connect after the session, you'll receive an email with the recording, and in that email, there will be a contact us form that you can use, or you can visit our website or send us an email. I will put that information in the chat right now. Alrighty. So with that, thank you again so much to Dr. Hobson for your presentation today, and thank you again to Dr. Evans for joining us. We hope you enjoyed this presentation, and please feel free to visit our website to learn more about this program. Thank you so much again. Hope you guys all have a wonderful day.
Thanks, folks. Take care.
Bye.